Where do our loyalties lie?
So why Ahmadiyyat?
They're not fanatics, they're sick.
To make a better world for everyone.
With real stories,
There's nothing that I've done differently, I've just been me.
real issues,
Is it possible to be loyal to two different countries?
real views. This is Real Talk Canada. Assalamu alaikum. History recalls the very concept of society built at the hands of a husband and a wife, joined by the constitution of marriage, where modern society appears to be avoiding this very concept, thus the reason more and more youngsters avoid getting married. With real stories, real issues, real views. This is Real Talk Canada. We have with us today an expert panel as well as a live audience in the studio. The subject we're discussing today is marriage in society. Before we get started, we want to get a word on the street.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in the want for a wife. This is the famous opening to a classic novel entitled Pride and Prejudice. Now, although written 200 years ago, these words can still be seen as relevant in our society. Just recently, we saw how a fairy tale wedding can captivate the world when Prince William, the future monarch of Britain and Canada, married Catherine Middleton. Their wedding was broadcast live across the world and watched by about 2 billion people. Despite the euphoria that ensued after this happy occasion, many see the concept of marriage as outdated. Some even see it in a terminal decline. It seems as if wherever we look, whether it be Britain, the United States, or even Canada, the statistics are all the same. The rate of marriage is lower than it has ever been. What's more, the average age of marriage seems to be getting older and older. If we were to look back 50 years ago, the average age of newlyweds in Britain was 22 for men and 20 for women. If we look at the same statistics today, the average age of newlyweds for both Britain and the United States is 28 for men and 26 for women. Now here in Canada, it gets even older. The average age for men is 28, and for women, 30. Contrary to the declining marriage rates, divorce rates are at an all-time high. The economic crisis did not only take a toll on the financial sector, but many divorces today are attributed to financial stress. Other reasons for divorce include breakdowns in communication, and in some unfortunate cases, physical and emotional abuse. We've come out here to the streets of downtown Toronto to see what everyday people think and have to say about the institution of marriage.
Marriage is traditional. You should save it till you're much older, not when you're younger. So, I don't know. For me, marriage wouldn't be right now. It would be when I'm more financially stable kind of thing.
I don't know about importance because 20 years ago, well, I mean, if we're thinking 40, 60 years ago, marriage was something that was absolutely 100% expected. There was no divorce. You pick someone, you were with them for the rest of your life. I think it's definitely different today, but I think it is still important in our culture.
I can only speak from my personal perspective, and going home, after a stressful day, if you find somebody who is understanding and caring and cares about you, then there's definitely a lot of comfort in that.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. My name is Afzal Qureshi.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hibba Qureshi.
And we've been happily married for 9 years, alhamdulillah. Basically, ours is essentially an arranged marriage, and by the grace of Allah, Blessed One, at that, we put our faith and trust in our parents in keeping with the traditions of Islam, Ahmadiyyat itself. And the very get-go, from the word go, it's been nothing but a blessing for us, be it the arrival of our children, finding better employment.
Many times my friends will say there's no way that I'm going to have an arranged marriage. I need to get to know the guy beforehand. And what I say to them is that I'm living testament to the fact that it did work for me. And it could also work for you if you just have the faith and the belief that whatever happens is for the best, and have that faith in Allah. I tell them that they're not praying hard enough.
There's a lot of pressure to be quote-unquote successful. You have to be somebody, you have to be somewhere before you can be married. And that gives them the perception, and that's the Western society in general, that if you're not accomplished, you cannot be married. I have to have perhaps a house, I have to have perhaps a car before I get married, I have to have this much bank balance before I get married.
I think the problem with today's generation is that the focus is put on materialistic things.
I think the best thing to do is trust the people who know you the most, and those people are your parents. Your parents know what your limits are. They know where you're moderately set. They know where your high and lows are. So they'll find a match for you which will match your highs and lows and then complement you in the best fashion. When you try to do it on your own, it really collides. It really does.
It's pretty.
Marriage is not a one-time thing. It gets built every day. And it takes work every day. And it takes attention every day. My advice to my young brothers and sisters who are looking to get married, who have just gotten married, it's not easy to adopt and adapt another person. It's not easy to find yourself in a relationship which, for all intents and purposes, is for life. And you may have contrasting things happening. That person may be the exact polar opposite of you. The beauty of our faith, our teachings
are actually opposite of each other.
We absolutely, and I think that's the compliment.
And that's what works.
That's what works, you know. And what people try to do is try to find too many compatibilities. And too many similar things can actually collide.
So my advice to young couples would be to pray. And if they don't know how to pray, some people don't know namaz. And if you don't know, try to learn. If you can't do that, pray in whatever language you know. That's what my mom used to say to me when I didn't know my namaz fully. She just, apni zuban mein kar lo, right? So in your own language. And Allah Ta'ala will show you some signs to let you know whether this is the right one for you.
And welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that segment with our word on the street. And straight away, we're going to get into introducing our panel. To my left here, I have Atahul Wahid Saab. Assalamu alaikum. He's a convert of 30 years, also an author. He's done numerous documentaries for Jamaat, as well as he's very well traveled with his missions all the way to Africa. Right next to him, we have Malik Lal Khan Saab, who's our Amir Jamaat Canada. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
We have Mubarak Nazir Saab, who's missionary in charge Canada. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And we also have Azam Akram Saab, who is a Jamia student. Assalamu alaikum. So straight away, we're going to get into our show. And the topic we're discussing is marriage in society. Before we get into the show, I want to put out there an open question to my panel here. How would you define the very concept of marriage in Islam? Amir Saab, I'll let you start.
Marriage in Islam is a sacred covenant to protect mankind, to provide comfort and continuity to the human race.
And in society, we see that the continuity to the human race comes at the hands of a wife and a husband, constitutionally married, which seems to be shifting now.
Yes.
And Atal Wahid Saab, if I could get your feedback on that.
Well, it's definitely shifted. I think most people don't know, most Canadians don't know, it wasn't always like this. We used to have a system called courtship. And the courtship system wasn't far from the Islamic system. And in that system, if a boy had an interest in a girl, he had to meet the girl in her home, and it was her mother who decided if that boy entered the home or not. So the whole basis of courtship was to protect the interests of the girl. What happened around 1910 to 1920 with the Industrial Revolution making people shift to the city, a lot of young girls moved to cities, lived in boarding homes, and the boys weren't allowed in the boarding homes, so they started meeting the boys on the street in front of the indifferent eyes of general public. So the courtship system shifted to the dating system that I call the sampling system. And to me, the dating system is simply a training ground for divorce. And what we have today, we have people dating, breaking up, they date, they break up, they get married, they get divorced. And then you can see the situation get worse over the years, and especially after the Second World War, when the male-female ratio was so lopsided, especially in Europe.
That's right.
You see promiscuity increasing, And since then, you see the institution of marriage becoming sicker and sicker, to the point these days it's very ill, and most people aren't interested in getting married.
And this society seems to be the exact opposite of that. They seem to be shying away from the very concept itself, and this society, from what you just described, seems the exact opposite. They don't even, courtship is in the distance past now, because they're very much even against the very concept itself. And Amir Sahib, why do you think that is?
I think man today wants instant gratification without any consequences, without any responsibility. This is why they want to enjoy the easy part of it, but they don't want to go with the responsibility it entails.
So what you're saying is the public is shifting towards the short-term pleasure while avoiding the long-term commitment.
Right.
Marraige sir, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's true. It's individualism. You know, we want to enjoy, and we think this is the object of marriage is just to enjoy, when in reality the object of marriage is not only procreation, peace of mind. You see, we come into this world not by our own accord, and we bid farewell to this world not on our own accord. When the time comes, well, that's the time. But we have only one choice, that is to get married. The Holy Prophet said you should get married in a family where the birth rate is higher. So you should marry in a family where you have a higher birth rate. And he has emphasized on marriage so much so that he said that even if you know, to protect your chastity, even if you have to fast, you have to control your diet so that you don't fall into that trap. So it is the desire of our Jamaat, because we are a Jamaat that is inshallah ta'ala bound to prosper. It is very important that our children, our youngsters get married not only at a younger age, but also they find the real true partners, and they do not just go because of the temporary beauty and you know, the education and all that. Should follow the criteria that has been set by Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that the piety should be the prime objective, because as far as beauty is concerned, it obviously after one or two births the beauty goes away. So it's very important that the piety, which as even Jesus Christ has said, that nobody can steal. You can steal somebody's wealth, but you can't steal his morals. So it's extremely important that our youngsters, our boys and our girls marry people with a sound character, because it is on our children, on our grandchildren, on children yet unborn, that great responsibilities are going to lie. So it's very, very important that
so Marraige, you speak about the high moral values, but the society seems to have shifted, not just in marriage, but people are getting vehicles for a short-term basis, they're getting houses for a short-term basis, careers are getting changed very quickly. So it seems that the society has a shift and some sort of a love with this short-term commitment.
Well, they are doing it at their own cost. You can see what's happening in the world. I mean, what you know the prophets have said, what all the 124,000 prophets have said. If you go against that, you do it at the displeasure of God, and you do it at your peril.
So that being said, and talking about your individual displeasure, Atal Bhai Sahab, I want to come back to you because you have definitely experience within society and you've seen those shift. You have some personal experience as well, if you don't mind sharing.
Well, I've been married twice. I had a typical Western marriage, and then I had an arranged marriage where I met my wife on our wedding night. The main difference I see is for those that get married in the West, and again it's becoming a rare phenomenon these days, the emphasis is on pleasure and having fun. Well, life's not always having fun. Where from the Islamic concept, we get married so we can undergo those trials and difficulties of life that you can't if you don't get married, fulfilling those extra responsibilities to please our Creator and become closer to our Creator. So the emphasis is entirely different. To the Western society, we discuss this emphasis of marriage to get closer to God. To them, we might as well be talking about Martians because they have no concept as to what that means. My concern is we can't live in isolation as a Jamaat from this society. The negative consequences are going to have an effect on our youth, and that's what we need to stop in its tracks and protect, that our youth understand the purpose of marriage, the importance of marriage, that they're properly prepared for marriage, and they can set an example to the rest of the society to follow, because that's one of the purposes of our Jamaat. The purpose of the promised Messiah coming was to reform society. So we have to join in on that jihad and also reform society by our own values, our own morals, and our own conduct.
And so speaking about society, there seems to be a trend in society in the increasing divorce rate. And that seems to be one of the trends why more and more youngsters are not only getting worried, scared, but concerned with the high divorce rate. Do you think that's a reason that a lot of youngsters, once again, are avoiding getting married?
Well, they've seen their parents go through a divorce, and they've seen the suffering and the unhappiness and the long-term difficulties it causes, and they don't want to go through that same process. So what's happening is actually the dating system is changing now, and not as many youth are involved in dating. Their group dating is happening because they're afraid of a commitment and afraid of a relationship, because what they see, the end product of that relationship, is suffering. So they're avoiding it. They're avoiding relationships, they're avoiding marriage.
Okay, so I want to come to you. You're recently married. Right. You know, you went through that process where, you know, the process in an Islamic format.
Right.
Did you feel any changes? Did you see what was different? Where did that commitment started for you?
Right. I mean, growing up in the Western society, it was sort of odd for me. I went through a so-called arranged marriage, but it's not in terms of what they'd like to portray as being an arranged marriage where you don't have a say. I mean, the key here is that Islam is the only religion in the world that has spoken of marriage and defined marriage. I mean, you take Christianity, you take Judaism, you take Buddhism. I mean, Jesus Christ didn't speak about marriage anywhere in the New Testament. There's only one reference to it, and that's in Matthew, where he talks about, you know, how it was said in the olden days that thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say to you now that even if you look at somebody with a evil or a crooked eye, and you've committed adultery in your heart, that's the only reference of marriage in religion. Islam is the only religion that defines marriage for you. It tells you what the purpose of marriage is. It tells you what the results of marriage are. It tells you what the end goal of marriage is. I mean, being a Jamia student studying in the Jamaat system here, according to the Quran and the Hadith and all that you're taught, you're going to have a proactive approach to marriage in Islam. I went through that system. I mean, I came from university, and I saw what was going on in the dorms, and university life is a free-for-all, basically. And the end result of that life is nothing positive. Yes, there are short-term gains, like Mubarak Nazir Saab mentioned, but in the end, you'll see the suffering later on. Not instantly, maybe 5 years down the line, maybe 10 years, if you're lucky. So I've been married about 4 years now, went through the Islamic system, and I tell you from experience that it is the best, and there are so many, I'm talking about our Jamaat as an example, positive influences that we see that help support this.
And talking about those positive experiences, we have viewers that are watching from all over the world, right, and this is a very hot subject right now. We also have a live audience in the studio, and I want to come right to my audience. We had a few concerns. Go ahead.
Yes, my question was that the youth today, they're growing up in this society where they see that, they see everyone else going after the short-term pleasures, and that's where they're growing up. So how do we counteract that they are being raised and they grow up in a society where they see everyone going after a short-term goal or a short-term career, as you mentioned, and they're being conditioned to behave the same way. So how do we counteract that?
And is it even society? So go ahead.
Well, you see, to address your question, you have to understand that it's not society all over the world. It's particularly those developed countries with the resources that can afford you the luxury of, I want to work here temporarily for 5 weeks, and then you move on to another job and promotion. I want to buy a car because I have the resource of money. I can lease a car, drive it for 3 years and return it back. So you look at the third world countries and you look at the situation there, they are not afforded that luxury. So it's the resources that Allah has bestowed us with in these countries. And if we misuse them, I mean, we're doing a great injustice. And that's where the key is there of that thing, that whole attitude of, you know, recycling.
You bring up a good point. Mubarak Zisab, I want to come to you. Would you agree with that? Is it the resource? Is it the wealth in society that we have this such shift in the mental attitudes?
Yeah, I think it's right. I remember some years back I was invited to a university where I was to give a lecture on marriage in Islam. And I found the audience a bit lukewarm, and they were not very, very attentive. But the moment I said that I live in paradise on this earth, when I enter my home, I feel I have entered paradise. And our accounts are the same, we share everything together. And I spoke about our cordial relationship, the number of years that I have got married, and the children I have. So there were a number of students who later on said, we want to visit your home. We want to come and see your wife. How come you built a paradise? We need role models. People, I mean, one or a few divorces here and there should not deter us, and we should not be unmindful that we have a job ahead. It is the responsibility of we human beings, not only for procreation, but also as Ahmadis, we are fighting an ideological battle, not with weapons, but we are fighting an ideological battle. Is a battle of ideology.
The Western attitude.
And our children and our grandchildren, our homes should be such that we should be able to attract people, and they should come to our home and see how cordially and how well behaved our children are, and how we love one another, and how we are in this world. So, I mean, the Holy Quran says that if you are blind in this world, you will be blind in the hereafter. So, if you have not seen any good in your marriage over here, what can you expect in the hereafter? So, it is important that we should utilize the time that we have and live happily together, select a spouse who is pious, who is righteous. The verses that the Holy Quran has Rasulullah used to recite, I mean 5 places where taqwa and taqwa and taqwa and taqwa is mentioned 5 times. That always you know, it's piety, it's purity, that should be taken, and if that is taken care of, then this life becomes a life of great pleasure, and you look forward to it. I am just back from my home, and I was tired, and 5-10 minutes talk with my wife relaxed me. I am a new person, rejuvenated. This is life which is worth living.
So you're speaking about the pleasures that come from being married as well. And I want to go right back to our live audience here. I know you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to, we looked at one angle of society where there are those that look for short-term pleasures. But there's also an angle of society, maybe minute, but I'm only saying this because I have a friend who goes through the same situation where he says that I am dating, but I have good intentions while I'm dating the person that I'm with, that in the future when I am ready, I will marry her. So what do we say to that? What do we say to the people like those that say that, you know, I have good intentions, that I am with this person, but I don't want to throw it away. I really do commit to this person. I want to marry this person one day. So what do we say to people like that?
So the very concept of dating.
Back to the first question. That's the million-dollar question right there. I'll tell you, but I'm going to answer the question, both questions with the same answer. He's setting a trap. Your friends are setting a trap. Okay? It's the benchmark trap. I'll give you an example. The first car you ever owned was a 2011 Z06 Corvette. Okay? And the next car you bought after that was Cobalt, because you had to get rid of the Corvette because you couldn't afford it. Every car you own after that Corvette is going to be, the Corvette's going to be the benchmark. You're going to compare that next car to the Corvette. Okay? What happens in the dating process is, guess what happens? Every girlfriend is going to be compared to another girlfriend. And sooner or later, they're not going to measure up. And even your friend, after they get married, is going to compare his wife to what she was like when she was his girlfriend. And that dating process is a fantasy, it's not reality. It's for fun, it's for enjoyment, it's here and there, entertainment value, etc. The purpose of a date is an entertainment, it's an entertainment issue. That's not the reality of life. So the trap is set. Your friend is setting a trap. He's going to compare his wife to what she was like when she was dating. Your friends are going to compare all their girlfriends to other girlfriends, and they're not going to add up, especially after they marry somebody, because marriage is reality. It's the difficulties and trials of life. As soon as you compare someone in the circumstances of marriage to a person in the circumstances of dating, the poor person that's your wife just lost. And you start looking down upon that person and start criticizing them. And if you listen and watch TV shows where people are going for counseling, watch Dr. Phil when he's got a couple in there that he's counseling. They'll always ask the same question: why can't it be like when we were dating? Right? It can't be like when they were dating. Dating's not reality, it's fantasy. It's a dream. And that's the trap our entire society is setting, and that's having a very negative effect on marriage.
So it sounds like it's almost like a spiral just going downwards.
Down and down and down, yes.
And I want to come back to our audience because it seems like our audience have lots of questions about this. If we could just get the mic right back there. I know you had a question there. Go ahead.
My question is, I mean, just we touched on young marriage, and then we also talked about, the arranged marriage in Islam. There seems to be a misconception about the arranged marriage in Islam, and that's why some people kind of shy away from it, because they don't exactly understand what the arranged marriage is. Because just the word arranged kind of, puts a kind of stereotype on it that, people take it, misunderstand it. So just if the panel could kind of, elaborate on what the arranged marriage in Islam actually is.
Marraige, I'll let you take that one.
I think arranged marriage is in the sense that the boy and the girl are consulted. I mean, because the parents look from a different angle, from a wider angle. The young man or the young girl looks from a very narrow angle of facial beauty and the color and the height and the weight and this and that. But the parents, have a very wide angle, and they look at the couple, they look at the family. They do not have any emotional value, but they look at the three-dimensional picture. And it's always beneficial because the parents really love that child and they want them to have a happy life. So it's very important that the parents play a role, I mean, of course, by asking, consulting. Look, the Holy Prophet ﷺ has said many times that, if you do not like, then that's it. Without assigning any reason, the Holy Prophet said that they should be separated. If the girl says, I don't like, have you found any fault in him? No, sir. What is it? I don't like. Separate.
Akram Sahib, I know you're itching to add something to this, so go ahead.
No, it's very interesting because we get a lot of negative, I guess, looks when somebody tells you, for example, I married my cousin, okay? And not a lot of people know this, but Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, married his cousin, But that's a side note. And the thing about arranged marriage is that we were mentioning last week, all marriages were arranged. I mean, you look at Europe back in from the 16th century onward, this whole process of courtship is an arranged marriage. Not only that, but families would get together and say, and I'm talking about European society, that my son will marry your daughter, sometimes even before birth. And this is recorded fact. And now, when we tell them these things, and this practice is happening in our subcontinent, Pakistan and India, that this practice happens where marriages are arranged at birth, and they look at us, at these marriages, as something very foreign. While in their society, it was instituted way back when. So that's the key to arranged marriages, that it's only a real new thing that not a lot of people pay attention towards. They look negatively upon it, is that, oh, this is arranged marriage, you don't have any say. Like Mubarak Nazir Saab said, any excuse. And Islam was the only religion to legitimate, to legalize or allow divorces. In Christianity, Catholic, if Brother Wahid can elaborate, you cannot get divorced. Divorce is not allowed.
It's a good point that you bring up, and as we're on the subject of arranged marriages, I know, Amir Sahib, you wanted to add something to that.
Yes, one misunderstanding about arranged marriages, while people criticize Islamic way of arranged marriage, is that the boy and the girl don't have information about one another. They perhaps have not even seen one another before the day of marriage. This is a misunderstanding. I quote the practice of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. At one time he saw a companion who had color on his clothes, and the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam understood. He smiled and said, what is this? He said, I just got married to such and such family. And the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked him, have you seen the bride? He said, no, Prophet of Allah, I have not seen her. He said, go and you should see the bride. This is conducive to your having more love with your wife, more liking for your wife in your marriage. So it's a long story what happened later, but it does show that the Holy Prophet emphasized that the girl and the boy should meet one another, and they should decide whether they like one another or not.
So there should be some sort of a mutual understanding.
Exactly.
And you know, I know a lot of the audience put up their hands and they have a lot of concerns about that. I'll let you start first.
I just wanted to ask, a lot of critics would say that some of the disadvantages of arranged marriages is the compatibility between the guy and the girl. So how would you address that issue when you only meet somebody once or twice? You don't really know if you're compatible with that person.
And your compatibility is a great point, and that's coming up in our dialogue as well. We're going to come right back to that. I know you had a question right back there, so we'll go to another audience member.
Yeah, basically the question was, most youth, they bring this issue up where how much information is enough information? That's usually their biggest concern, that, you know, seeing her is one level of information that you can get, but to what extent can we take that? And some people take it to dating, that I'm just trying to find out about the girl, or vice versa.
One way of comparing the two systems, arranged marriages and courtships, or other systems in which the boy and the girl are free to know one another, rather live with one another before they decide to get married. Are these marriages more successful than the arranged marriages? If they are, then we have to think about it. But the data available to us is that these marriages are miserably worse than the arranged marriages. What is the reason then? You have all the information, you have all the decision whether you like the girl or not, whether the girl likes you or not, whether she likes the way you talk, the way you sleep, the way you wake up, the way you take care of your personal hygiene. They know all of these things which normally you would like to know about your spouse, but are these more successful?
In fact, those marriages where the couple live together before marriage have the highest failure rate.
So the question of how much is enough, I think this is a fallacy. The Islamic instruction about this is that we should try to have comparable backgrounds. The word kuf is used, which means that as far as possible they should be compatible with one another. And the most important point of compatibility Islam has emphasized is piety, because when you are compatible from this angle, you would be more resilient, you would be more adaptable, and you would be more caring. And without caring, without adjustments, without your willingness to compromise, no relationship can be successful.
What you want to add?
Human beings are different to one another. I mean, even the twins have got differences. So when you marry, and especially if it's advisable that you marry at a younger age, because that is the time when the clay is still not dry, it can be molded. So when a person gets married, there are two oceans which collide together, and they make a compromise, and there is an equilibrium that has to be set, endothermic or exothermic, whatever heat is produced. So it's very important, because we are different from one another. I mean, no people, even my thumb is different from anybody's thumb in the entire world. So because those differences are there, they will be there. And if we marry at a younger age, as Islam has advised that we should marry as quickly as possible, then the adjustment is possible. But when people marry, as you were just saying, that 30 years or 35 years. The clay is already dry. You cannot change it. You got to break it, and that's why you break it, and that's why the marriages break. The other thing about divorce is that once in a while there are divorces, there are problems, I drive all the time and I see fatalities on the road. I don't stop driving. I keep on driving, and with the hope that everything will be okay.
So you just touched up on when the clay is still soft. So what is the right age? You know, because we're finding that if it's too late,
but, you know, adolescence, I mean, as soon as the girl, look, Hazrat Muslim Maud married his daughters at a very young age. I mean, you keep on educating, and now if the girl is now has become a graduate, and the boys, you know, do not have that that level of education, and so sometimes there is a difference in the compatibility. I remember when I was about to get my daughter married, and I made a telephone call to Hazrat Khalifatul Mufti Rabi, and he listened to me and he said, "Is kuf there? I mean, are you comfortable with the family as well?" So as Amir Sahib has just said, that there should be a compatibility of the family. I mean, we have our different customs, we have our different levels of you know, levels of living. So that should be explored.
Seems like the compatibility needs to be there with more than just the husband and wife. It's also the full family that's involved as well. And the audience, you know, once again, we're going to go right back to them as there's a lot of questions out there. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I personally got married actually at a very early age actually. I was married at the age of 23.
Oh, are you married?
I am married, alhamdulillah. And at the age of 23 I got married, and a lot of my friends, actually all of university, I was actually engaged. So almost for 3 years or so, I was actually engaged. A lot of my friends were I was probably the first person that got married out of all friends after graduation. So almost right after graduation, I did not even have a job or anything, but I got married. Alhamdulillah, a week later, I actually got a job. And alhamdulillah, right now, I'm actually blessed with a son. I also have a son, alhamdulillah. And at the same time, so like you just said earlier just now, that being able to mold to each other, I find it a lot easier now because I'm still right now looking for a job that I can actually grow. I'm not looking like the career I will always adopt to. I will adopt to the same way I will adopt to the wife. You and I, my wife and I will collaborate with each other. So it's a very easier way of communicating with each other. At the same time, right now, I'm actually back in university. I'm actually taking teacher's college. I'm studying it for 1 year again. My wife is also studying. So it's actually a very, very comfortable zone for us.
So that's a great way to learn that you guys have found that adaptability and meeting each other right in the middle. I want to get the mic right over here. I know you had a quick question, and then we're going to come right back to our
when you get married, you come in a fortress. You are protected. You are in a shield. So the moment you get married, you are inside a fortress, because in chastity, you know. So you do not waste your energies here and there, and so you come in a place of security.
And talking about that, before we go back to our audio member, I know Akram Sahib, you wanted to add something to that.
No, I just wanted to say that was a really great story, and that you know, one of the excuses for people or our youth not getting married is that we cannot support or we're not financially sound. That is an example right there that you know, that goes against what that excuse is saying. Now, there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ who says that those who do not get married for fear of poverty think ill of Allah. It is Allah who takes care of all these matters. A marriage is a spiritual connection. Back to Korsha's question about how much information is enough and whatnot. Listen, that's where the whole concept of arranged marriage benefits you, is that you're not just meeting a girl and a guy and those two are just getting together. It's the families that are involved. You do a background check. The arranged marriage format supports that. And also, the Quran tells us, marry spouses of your choice. I mean, nobody's forcing you to do anything here. And the other thing about not having enough information, I think that's the best part of marriage. Once you get in, then you start figuring it out. It's been 4 years for me now, and there are new things that I'm learning every day. It keeps the relationship exciting. rather than stale once you've enjoyed everything before dating.
And your wife also learns new information every day.
That's true.
So that clay's still soft.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to come back to this point. You know, we've talked about some of the issues in society, some of the issues that a lot of the youth face directly as they're thinking about getting married. I want to shed some light on some of the positives as well. Where can we find some of these positive influences, good positive examples within our Jamaat of successful marriages?
I have to meet families on an ongoing basis, and sometimes there are complaints that the spouses are not paying attention, or there are problems. But once in a while I come across such good examples that I'm so delighted that by grace of Allah, following the Islamic teaching on marriage, these couples are becoming role models for us. And I feel that it is my great pleasure to share here one example of a couple which I consider is a role model. It was a few months ago that I met a girl. They have been married for about 4 or 5 years, and she told me that I consider my husband as the greater blessing of Allah that I have received. He is so much caring for me that I'm surprised. He is always on the lookout what pleases me, what would be comfortable for me, what worries me. He is more caring for my parents than I have been for my parents. And my mother and my father, my siblings, they love him more than they love me. I thought this is very out of common things I experienced, so I probed her, and she told me more. And the more she told me, always I went back to the Islamic teaching about caring for the husband, and whatever she was telling me was as if this is the fruit of obedience to the teachings of Islam on how you care for your spouse. And then next I met her husband, and I told her, your wife is very happy, and by grace of Allah she is very satisfied. But I didn't tell him everything she had told me. I asked him, how do you feel about her? Is she caring for you? He said that I'm surprised that my mother-in-law has been training her to be an ideal wife for me. When I come home, when I go for work in the morning, she is there, she says me goodbye, and I can listen to her lips that she is praying that Allah may bless this day. And during the day, she is thinking about when I return, what would she do. And when I step in the home, she greets me, and her greeting takes all the tarry feelings I had. And once I'm home, I'm in heaven. And I tell you, the greatest joy and comfort I find, it's in my home. I don't want to go to parties. I don't want to meet the late night friends meeting, because my greatest comfort of my heart is in my home.
MashaAllah, that's a very, very great story. And for a lot of our viewers all around the world, you know, that's every couple's, everybody that's looking to get married's ideal goal, to find a companion like that. And we also discussed some of the issues that we're having in society, but also some great example. We are going to take a quick break. We do ask you to stay with us, and we'll be right back with you. This is Real Talk Canada, discussing marriages.
An interlingual channel promoting interfaith dialogue. Worldwide, live and interactive. On satellite television and the internet. This is MTA International.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Real Talk Canada. The topic we're discussing today is marriage. Right before the break, we discussed the various different issues among youth in our Jamaat and youth in general, as well as we talked about the various different issues and challenges that youth have to face when picking a partner, as well as we also had an opportunity to discuss some fantastic examples of married couples. We're going to start this time with our audience, and I want to go right to our live audience. I know you had a question there.
Yes, I just wanted to give my personal input regarding one of the questions. And one of the questions was, how do we counteract all those negative influences in society where there's such a high rate of divorce and there's this dating system going on? My personal opinion, we should provide them or fill that void of negativity with positivity. And in order for us to do that, we need to present to them positive examples, and real talk and shows like this, like these are one such example. And then we can present people that have had positive, successful marriages. That's another example. And so, and the best example is obviously the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, not only that, we need to also revert back to our original teachings, and we need to see what the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has outlined for the basis of getting married. And if we do that, which is righteousness and taqwa, and if we do that, then more often than not, the marriages that do happen will be successful, inshallah.
Exactly. You bring up a great point, and I want to bring the conversation right back to the panels, and I want to talk about the roles the parents play. As your own child is ready to get married, when is a good time to start having that conversation? When is a good time to start training them? When is the right time to even start looking for a potential candidate? And Amir Sahib, I'll let you start.
I would say that between 20 and 22 years of age, the parents should start talking to them about their potential marriage, and telling them that this is one of the most important decisions of their life, and howsoever they can try, howsoever much information they can have, only Allah knows who is going to be the perfect match for him or her. So the best resource available to that young boy or girl is prayers to God, who knows the potentialities of every individual, and who can make the perfect couple reach one another. So I would say that this is the starting point. We should emphasize the importance of prayers for marriage.
What Nazir Sahib talked about how Allah knows best. So as a parent, what are your responsibilities knowing that Allah knows best, and as you're preparing your child, what are some of the steps you should take during the preparation process?
I have very little to add to what Amir Sahib has already said. We should, as soon as a child, as your son or your daughter comes to the age of maturity, puberty, and that is the time we should, people some things far ahead. Now I've started thinking about my grandchildren, and one must always be on the lookout to see, look at the compatibility, look at the height, and look at the education, and look at the temperament and all that. So it's very important that we start this at an early age, and with the proper consultation with our children, and giving them the confidence that we are for them. I remember when I wanted to have my sons married, I was in Canada, and I was going to Pakistan, and my son said that you are our well-wisher. Here is the nikah form. We will sign it, and you take it to Pakistan, both of you, and whatever you decide, we know it's going to be good for us. So I went there and I phoned them and I said, I have decided, I'm suggesting this and this and this. And one of my children, and I'm very proud of that, he said, Dad, we have given you those forms already. We know that you are for us. You will never think ill about us. So whatever you like, we give you the total absolute authority. Although we have got the right to intervene, but we have got so much confidence. So I made a choice, and I feel that they are having a very, very happy and productive life. So it's important to have them in confidence, and at a younger age, as I said earlier, the earlier the better.
It also sounds like you had a pre-existing great relationship with your own son before even in the process, because obviously they respected you with that process.
Well, yes, we try because, you know, children are very good observers. They observe, they do not talk, but they observe their parents. They observe what they are doing, and it goes into their psyche, it goes into their DNA about what they see in their parents. So long sermons and lectures may not be so productive as actually seeing the parents. How do they resolve their disputes? How do they resolve their differences? Differences are there, as I said earlier. Differences must be there.
And we were talking about earlier finding the right role models. I guess the role models exist right in the very home that you're brought up. So your parents are your biggest role models. And I thought, if you could just add to that.
Not only are your parents your biggest role models, what I've noticed through observation is when children obey their parents, there's automatic blessings and benefits. Even if the parent's advice isn't the best, it seems that God makes that advice the best after the boy or girl obeys their parents. And I emphasize that to my children all the time, and I emphasize that, you know, your mother knows you better than yourself. She can tell when you walk in the door after school what kind of day you've had, whether you're sick, whether you're ill, whether you're feeling down, tired. She knows everything about you. And she knows what characteristics would be best in your partner, whether it's a boy or a girl. So obedience to parents is of paramount importance because there's blessings in that obedience from Allah Himself. And I can't emphasize that enough. And again, the example in the home is so important. My mother's 89 and my father's 91.
Mashallah.
And my father thanks my mother every night for being his wife. It's really something to hear.
You bring up a great point that, you know, we hear this all the time. Your mother knows you best, your mother knows you best. But I still find the youth, especially the males, we sometimes disagree. You know, your mother tells you, I know you best, but for us as males, we go, well, I don't think you really do. And I want to go to my audience. I know you had a question right back there. Go ahead.
Yes, as we're talking about parents' involvement with marriage and the relationship they have with their children, my question is that how much involvement is allowed and how much privacy should parents give to the couple, the newly married couple?
So in terms of involvement, where do you draw the line? How much can you interfere while still staying on the sidelines?
For our community, one of the very important things to consider is to arrange independent accommodation for the new couple. Sometimes mothers think that our son is so close to us and they would be more comfortable and it would be economically more viable if the married couple stays with us. They are all good intentions, but I would think that it must be a rule that in the beginning for 1 or 2 years they must live independently, and if after that out of their own accord they want to come to live with them, that's fine. But in the beginning it's a great rule to observe that they should live independently for the first 2 or 3 years.
And I want to come to you because you're more newlywed and you came into that role, and I want to get your feedback. How has it transformed you, or how has it affected you, if at all?
No, I mean, my parents were involved in the marriage. They were involved to the extent that they made the marriage happen. I just want to add on just a little bit of what Amir Saab said, and he's absolutely right, is that after that marriage, even the promised Messiah ﷺ had advised the community that in Urdu, jab apne bachon ki shaadi karwaye, unka alag intizam karwaya jaye, that once you get your children's married off, you should accommodate them in separate accommodations. And we see that, the benefits of that. It gives a bit of privacy, which married couples do need. I mean, it's not interference when the mother comes or involves herself. It's actually very healthy for that marriage. But sometimes it can be overbearing sometimes to a newlywed. So there needs to be that sense of privacy, like Amir Saab just mentioned, for 2 to 3 years at least. And in those 2 to 3 years, that distance also gets this whole dynamic relationship between the parents and the married couple. Once you have separated for that little instance, once you come to your home again, there's so much more love there. It's just wonderful. It's amazing.
You know, and this is the topic of the parents' involvement that a lot of youth are always concerned with. They're always wondering, you know, when to get their parents involved if there is an issue, whether not to get their parents involved at all. And we saw a lot of audience hands went up when we were discussing the parents. Go ahead.
Just as parents are obviously a role model for us, but as Ahmadi Muslims, one of the best role models for us is also the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we look at his life and his marriages, we see that, you know, at a time he would have 4 wives. Now, obviously, there have been, you know, certain, you know, rules attributed to that, but looking at that example as him being a role model for us, how can we apply that in today's society? Maybe, you know, having multiple wives at a time. So how can that be applied in today's society? Looking at the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a role model for us.
And obviously, you know, we're in a society now where that's almost, you know, a very shocking news when you hear that. So obviously, the attitudes in society have shifted. And Amir Sahib, once again, I'll let you start. Go ahead.
Okay, I would take 2 aspects of it. The first one is that the society does not like more than 1 wives, but they have no problem having 10 or even more women living with the same man at the same time. So it is ridiculous for the society to object to a legalized and with all the responsibilities going with the multiple wives. They object to more than 1, but they have no problem with the dozens. The other aspect is that those who have more than 1 wives, they owe it to Islam that they practice the perfect equity between the wives on the pattern of the life of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had multiple wives, but nowhere do we see that he was inclined towards one to the detriment of the other. He cared for each one of them, even when it was not easy for him. So if we avail the permission to have more than 1 wife, then according to the instruction of the Holy Quran, we have to maintain perfect balance. If we do that, then it would be a service to Islam during this age when multiple marriages are being looked at with suspicion.
Jazakallah, I want to come right back to yourself, Akram Sahib. I know you wanted to add to that very point.
I mean, Amir Sahib hit the head on the nail, sorry. But just another fact we just wanted to mention, Atal Wahid Sahib mentioned about the world wars and how there was an imbalance of women to men. That ratio was skewed, and that led to promiscuity and whatnot. But that's one of the factors that breeds promiscuity, is that irregular ratio there. And now, for example, in North America, without naming certain ethnic groups, you see that they are, in jails, or the men are very low compared to the women, and in those certain communities, you see the promiscuity rate higher. Certain countries, in the West Indies, for example, you'll see that majority of the males who are healthy, young, and who are able to marry are in jails, and the women out there are the ratio is just way off, and that is breeding a lot of promiscuity there.
Gotcha.
I would like to add, I recently visited Jamaica, and I think my comments are going to be appreciated by our Missionary in Charge Sahib also. I was told that the ratio of females to males in Jamaica is 70% to 30%. Now look at those women who have no man to marry. What happens is that they are now on hunting trips, and they try to please men who are already married to seduce them out of their marriages. So if Islam's permission to marry more than 1 wives was practiced in Jamaica, they would not have to resort to this seduction.
I see. We could take weeks discussing the institution of marriage, but this brings a conclusion to another great episode of Real Talk Canada, where we took the opportunity to discuss the topic of marriage. I want to thank our panel. I also want to thank our audience in the studio, but more importantly, I want to thank you, the viewers at home. We really hope you enjoyed the show, and the best way of showing us that is by getting involved. We would love to have your feedback and you on the show. You can always contact us via Twitter. Please check out our website, mta.tv/realtalk, as well as you can always email us, realtalk@mta.tv. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.